The covenant with Abimelech. After a stay of 26 years in the land of the Philistines, Abraham departed and settled in the neighborhood of Hebron. There he was visited by Abimelech with 20 of his grandees, who requested him to help make an alliance with the Philistines. As long as Abraham was childless, the heathen did not believe in his piety. But when Isaac was born, they said, "God is with you." But again they entertained doubt of his piety when he cast off Ishmael. They said, "Were he a righteous man, he would not drive his firstborn from his house." But when they observed the impious deeds of Ishmael, they said, "God is with you in all you do." That Abraham was the favorite of God, they could see plainly. Although Sodom was destroyed and all traffic had come to a standstill in that region, yet Abraham's treasure chambers were filled. For these reasons, the Philistines sought to form an alliance with him, to remain in force for 3 generations, for it is to the 3rd generation that the love of a father extends. Before Abraham concluded the covenant with Abimelech, he reproved him on account of a well, for correction leads to love, and there is no peace without correction. The herdsmen of Abraham and those of Abimelech had left their dispute about the well to decision by ordeal. The well was to belong to the party to whose sheep the waters would rise so that they could drink. But the shepherds of Abimelech disregarded the agreement, and they fought for their own use. As a witness and a perpetual sign that the well belonged to him, Abraham set aside 7 sheep, corresponding to the 7 Noachian laws, binding upon all men. But God said, "You gave him 7 sheep. As you live, the Philistines shall one day kill 7 righteous men, Samson, Hophni, Phinehas, and Saul, with his 3 sons. And they will also destroy 7 holy places, and they will keep the holy ark in their country as booty of war for 7 months. And furthermore, only the 7th generation of your descendants will be able to rejoice in the possession of the land promised to them." After concluding the alliance with Abimelech, who acknowledged Abraham's right upon the well, Abraham called the place Beersheba, because they swore to a covenant of friendship. In Beersheba, Abraham lived many years, endeavoring to spread the law of God. He planted a large grove and made 4 gates for it, east, west, north, and south. Then he planted a vineyard in it. If a traveler came, he entered by the gate that faced him, sat in the grove, ate and drank until he was satisfied, and then departed. The house of Abraham was always open to all passer-by, and they came daily. If one was hungry and he came to Abraham, he would give him what he needed. And if one was naked, he would clothe him with the garments of the poor man's choice, and give him silver and gold, and make known to him the Lord that had created him. After the wayfarers had eaten, they were in the habit of thanking Abraham for his kind entertainment, and he would reply, "Don't give thanks to me, rather return thanks to your host, he who alone provides food and drink for all creatures." Then the people would ask, "Where is he?" And Abraham would answer, "He is the ruler of heaven and earth. He wounds and he heals. He forms the embryo in the womb and brings it forth into the world. He causes the plants and trees to grow. He kills and he makes alive." When the people heard such words, they would ask, "How should we return thanks to God?" And Abraham would instruct them in these words, "Say, 'Blessed be the Lord, who is blessed. Blessed be he that gives food and drink to all flesh." In this manner, Abraham taught those who enjoyed his hospitality. Abraham's house so became not only a lodging place for the hungry and thirsty, but also a place of instruction, where the knowledge of God and his law were taught. Satan accuses Abraham. In spite of the lavish hospitality practiced in the house of Abraham, it happened once that a poor man, or rather an alleged poor man, was turned away empty-handed, and this was the immediate reason for the last of Abraham's temptations, the sacrifice of his favorite son, Isaac. It was that day on which Abraham celebrated the birth of Isaac with a great banquet, to which all the nobles of the time were present with their wives. Satan, who always appears at a feast in which no poor people participate, and keeps aloof from those to which poor guests are invited, turned up at Abraham's banquet in the guise of a beggar asking alms at the door. He noticed that Abraham had invited no poor man, and he knew that his house was the right place for him. Abraham was occupied with the entertainment of his distinguished guests, and Sarah was endeavoring to convince the wives that Isaac was their child in very truth, and not a spurious child. No one concerned himself about the beggar at the door, who then accused Abraham before God. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. And the Lord said to Satan, "Where have you been?" Satan answered, "Going to and fro on the earth and walking up and down in it." And the Lord said to Satan, "What have you to say concerning the children of the earth?" Satan answered, "I have seen all the children of the earth serving you and remembering you when they require something from you. And when you give them what they require, then they forsake you and remember you no more. Have you seen Abraham, the son of Terah, who at first had no children? Then he served you and erected altars to you wherever he went, and he proclaimed your name continually to all the children of the earth. And now that his son Isaac is born to him, he has forsaken you. He made a great feast for all the inhabitants of the land, but you he has forgotten. For amid all he has done, he brought you no offering, neither burnt offering nor peace offering, neither lamb nor goat, even from the time of his son's birth till now, being 37 years. He built no altar before you, nor brought up any offering to you, for he saw that you gave him what he requested, and then he forgot you." And the Lord said to Satan, "You have considered my servant Abraham, for there is none like him on the earth, a perfect and an upright man, that fears me and avoids evil. As I live, were I to say to him, 'Bring Isaac your son as a sacrifice before me,' he would not withhold him, much less if I told him to bring up a burnt offering from his flocks or herds." Satan answered the Lord, "Ask Abraham for Isaac as a sacrifice, as you have said, and we will see whether or not he will do it." This interested God because he wished to test Isaac also. Ishmael once boasted to Isaac, saying, "I was 13 years old when the Lord spoke to my father to circumcise us, and I did not transgress his word." Isaac answered Ishmael, saying, "You boast to me about this, a little bit of your flesh which was took from your body, which was a direct commandment of the Lord? As the Lord lives, if he should say to my father, 'Take your son Isaac and bring him up as an offering before me,' I would not refrain, but I would joyfully accept it." The journey to Moriah. So the Lord thought to test both Abraham and Isaac in this matter. He said to Abraham, "Now take your son." Abraham, "I have 2 sons. I do not know which of them you command me to take." God, "Your only son." Abraham, "The one is the only son of his mother, and the other is the only son of his mother." God, "The one you love." Abraham, "I love this one and I love that one." God, "Isaac." Abraham, "And where shall I go?" "To the land I will show you, and offer Isaac there for a burnt offering." Abraham, "Am I fit to perform the sacrifice? Am I a priest? Ought not the high priest Shem do it?" God, "When you arrive at that place, I will consecrate you and make you a priest." Abraham said to himself, "How can I do this? How can I separate my son Isaac from Sarah, his mother?" And he went into the tent and sat before Sarah and said, "My son Isaac has grown up, and he has not yet studied the service of God. Tomorrow I will bring him to Shem in Eber, and there he will learn the ways of the Lord. for they will teach him to know the Lord, and to know how to pray, and to know the way of serving the Lord his God. And Sarah said, You have spoken well. Go, my lord, and do as you have said. But take him not far from me, neither let him remain there too long, for my soul is bound within his soul. And Abraham said to Sarah, My daughter, let us pray to the Lord our God, that he may do good with us. Sarah then took her son Isaac and spent the whole night with him. She kissed and embraced him and laid injunctions on him till morning. And then she said to Abraham, O my lord, I pray you, take precious care of your son. Keep your eye on him, for I have no other son or daughter. Watch over him. If he is hungry, give him bread, and if he is thirsty, give him water. Do not let him go on foot, but on the camel. Do not let him sit in the sun. Don't let him wander off by himself, or deny whatever he may desire, but do for him as he asks. After spending the whole night weeping on account of Isaac, she got up in the morning and selected a very fine and beautiful garment from those that Abimelech had given to her, and she dressed Isaac in it. She also put a turban on his head, and she fashioned a precious stone on the top of the turban. Then she gave them provisions for the road. Sarah went out with them and went away down the road to see them off, and they said to her, Go back to the tent. When Sarah heard these words from her son Isaac, she wept bitterly, and Abraham wept with her, and Isaac wept with them, a great weeping. Also, those of the servants that went with them wept greatly. Sarah caught hold of Isaac and held him in her arms, and she embraced him, and continued to weep with him. And Sarah said, Who knows if I'll ever see you again? So Abraham departed with Isaac amid great weeping. Abraham's tears greater than the rest. Sarah and the servants returned to the tent. Abraham took 2 of his young men with, Ishmael and Eliezer. And while they were walking down the road, the young men spoke in these words to each other. Said Ishmael to Eliezer, Now my father Abraham is going with Isaac to bring him for a burnt offering to the Lord. When he returns, he will give me all that he possesses to inherit after him, for I am his firstborn. Eliezer answered, Surely Abraham cast you off with your mother, and swore that you would not inherit anything. And to who will he give all that he has, all his precious things? To his servant, who has been faithful in his house all these years. To me, having served him day and night, doing all he asks. The Holy Spirit answered, Neither this one nor that will inherit Abraham. While Abraham and Isaac were walking along the road, Satan came and appeared to Abraham in the figure of a very old man, humble and of contrite spirit, and said to him, Are you silly or foolish that you go to do this thing to your only son? God gave you a son in your later days, in your old age, and now you go and slaughter him who did not commit any violence? And will you be the cause of your only son to perish from the earth? You know and understand, this thing cannot be from the Lord, for the Lord would not do man such evil to command him, Go and slaughter your son. Abraham, hearing these words, knew it was Satan who wanted to turn him astray from the way of the Lord, and he rebuked him, so that Satan went away. But Satan returned and went to Isaac, appearing to him in the figure of a young man, comely and well-favored, saying to him, Do you not know that your old man is bringing you to the slaughter? Don't listen to him. He's an old man. Let not your precious soul and beautiful figure be lost from the earth. Isaac told these words to his father, and Abraham said to him, Take no heed of him. Do not listen to his words, for he is Satan, endeavoring to lead us astray from the command of our God. So Abraham rebuked Satan again, and Satan departed from them. Seeing he could not prevail over them, he transformed himself into a large river of water in the road. And when Abraham, Isaac, and the 2 young men reached that place, they saw a river as large and powerful as the mighty waters. They entered the river trying to pass it, but the further they went, the deeper it got, so that the water reached up to their necks, and they were all terrified. But Abraham recognized the place, and he knew that there had been no water there before. And he said to his son, "I know this place, on which there is no brook or water. Now, surely it is Satan who is doing this to us." And again Abraham rebuked Satan, saying, "The Lord rebuke you, O Satan, be gone from us, for we go by the command of God." And Satan was terrified at the voice of Abraham, and he went away, and the place became dry land again. So Abraham went with Isaac toward the place that God had told him. Satan then appeared to Sarah in the figure of an old man and said to her, "Where did your husband go?" And she said, "To his work." "And where did your son Isaac go?" "He went with his father to study the Torah." Satan said, "You poor old woman, your teeth will be set on edge on account of your son. You didn't know that Abraham took his son on the road to sacrifice him." Sarah's loins trembled, and all her limbs shook. She was no more of this world. Nevertheless, she aroused herself and said, "All that God has told Abraham, may he do it, to life and to peace." On the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place at a distance. He noticed on the mountain a pillar of fire, reaching from the earth to heaven, and a heavy cloud, in which the glory of God was seen. Abraham said to Isaac, "Do you see what I see?" Isaac answered, "I see a pillar of fire and a cloud, and the glory of the Lord is on the cloud." Abraham knew then that Isaac was accepted before the Lord for an offering. He then asked Ishmael and Eliezer, "Do you see what we see on that mountain?" They answered, "It looks like just any other mountain." Then Abraham knew that they were not accepted before the Lord to go with them. So Abraham said to them, "You two stay here with the asses, for you are like the ass. As little as it sees, so little do you see. I and Isaac will go to yonder mountain and worship there before the Lord, and this evening we will return to you." An unconscious prophecy had come to Abraham, for he prophesied that he and Isaac would both return from the mountain. Eliezer and Ishmael remained where they were, as Abraham had commanded, while he and Isaac went on. While they were walking along, Isaac spoke to his father. "Behold, I see the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering before the Lord?" Abraham answered, saying, "The Lord has chosen you, my son, for a perfect burnt offering instead of the lamb." And Isaac said to his father, "I will do all that the Lord has spoken to you, with joy and cheerfulness in my heart." Abraham again said to Isaac, "Is there in your heart any thought or counsel concerning this which is not proper? Tell me, my son, I pray you, be honest with me." And Isaac answered, "As the Lord lives and as your soul lives, there is nothing in my heart to cause me to deviate either to the right nor the left from the word he has spoken to you. Neither limb nor muscle has moved or stirred on account of this, nor is there in my heart any thought or evil counsel. But I am joyful and cheerful of heart in this matter, and I say, Blessed is the Lord, who on this day has chosen me as a burnt offering before him." Abraham greatly rejoiced at the words of Isaac, and they went on together to that place that the Lord had spoken of. Abraham started to build an altar, and build he did, while Isaac handed him stones and mortar until they finished. Abraham took the wood and arranged it on the altar, and bound Isaac to kill him for a burnt offering before the Lord. Isaac spoke, "Father, be strong, strengthen your arm, and bind my hands and feet securely, for I am but a young man, 37 years old, and you are an old man." When I behold the slaughtering knife in your hand, I may begin to tremble at the sight and push against you, for the will to live is bold. Also I could do myself an injury and make myself unfit to be sacrificed. I adjure you, therefore, my father, be strong, execute the will of your Creator, delay not. Roll up your sleeves, gird your loins, and after you have slaughtered me, burn me to fine ashes. Then gather the ashes, bring them to my mother, and place them in a vessel in her chamber. Then, at all hours, whenever she enters her chamber, she will remember her son Isaac and weep. And again Isaac spoke, After you have slaughtered me, and returned to Sarah my mother, and she asks you, Where is Isaac? How will you answer her? And what will you two do in your old age without me to help you? Abraham answered and said, We know we cannot survive but only a few days. He who was our comfort before you were born will comfort us now and beyond. After he had put the wood in order and bound Isaac on the wood, Abraham braced his arms, rolled up his garments, and leaned his knees against Isaac with all his strength. God, sitting on his throne high and exalted, saw how the hearts of the two were the same, and tears were rolling down the eyes of Abraham upon Isaac, and from Isaac down upon the wood, so that it was submerged in tears. When Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son, God spoke to the angels. Do you see how Abraham, my friend, proclaims the unity of my name in the world? Remember what I told you at the time of creation, when you spoke, What is man that you are mindful of him? And I answered, Who would there have been to make known the unity of my name in this world? The angels then broke into loud weeping, and they exclaimed, Is it the end of the road for man? But where is the reward for Abraham, who took wayfarers into his house, gave them food and drink, and went with them to bring them on the way? Are you breaking the covenant? For when you spoke to him, saying, In Isaac shall your seed be named, and saying, My covenant I will establish with Isaac, has it ended? For the slaughtering knife is at his throat. The tears of the angels fell upon the knife, so that it could not cut Isaac's throat. But from terror his soul escaped him. Then God spoke to the archangel Michael and said, Don't just stand there, stop the slaughter. Michael, anguish in his voice, cried out, Abraham, Abraham, lay not your hand on Isaac, do nothing to him. Abraham said, God commanded me to slaughter Isaac. Can you command me not to? To who do I listen, the Lord or his disciple? Then Abraham heard, By myself I have sworn, saith the Lord, because you have done this thing, and have not withheld your son, your only son, that in blessing I will bless you, and I will multiply your seed as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand of the sea, and your descendants shall take the gates of their enemies, and in your seed shall the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. At once Abraham jumped back from Isaac, who returned to life, revived by the heavenly voice admonishing Abraham not to slaughter him. Abraham loosed the ropes, and Isaac stood on his feet and spoke the benediction. Blessed are you, O Lord, who bring the dead back to life. Then spoke Abraham to God, Shall I now go without having offered a sacrifice? God replied and said, Lift up your eyes and behold the sacrifice behind you. And Abraham lifted up his eyes, and behold, behind him a ram caught in the thicket, which God had created in the twilight of the Sabbath of the week of creation, and prepared since then as a burnt offering instead of Isaac. The ram had been running toward Abraham when Satan caught hold of him and entangled his horns in the thicket, that he might not advance to Abraham. Abraham, seeing this, fetched him from the thicket, and brought him to the altar as an offering in the place of his son Isaac. Abraham sprinkled the blood of the ram on the altar, and he exclaimed and said, This is instead of my son, and may this be considered as the blood of my son before the Lord. And whatever Abraham did by the altar, he exclaimed and said, This is instead of my son, and may it be considered before the Lord in place of my son." God accepted the sacrifice of the ram, and it was accounted as though it had been Isaac. As the creation of the ram had been extraordinary, so also was the use to which all parts of the carcass were put. Not one thing went to waste. The ashes of the parts burned on the altar formed the foundation of the inner altar, where the expiatory sacrifice was brought once a year on the Day of Atonement, the day on which the offering of Isaac took place. Of the sinews of the ram, David made 10 strings for his harp. The skin served Elijah for his girdle, and of 2 horns, the one was blown at the end of the revelation on Mount Sinai, and the other will be used to proclaim the end of the exile, when the great horn shall be blown, and they shall come who were about to perish in the land of Assyria, and who were outcasts in the land of Egypt, and they shall worship the Lord on the holy mountain at Jerusalem. When God commanded the father to desist from sacrificing Isaac, Abraham said, "One man tricks another because he knows not what is in his heart. But you surely knew I was ready to sacrifice my son." God, "It was manifest to me, and I knew it, that you would withhold not even your soul from me." Abraham, "And why then did you afflict me so?" God, "It is my wish that the whole world comes to know you and your name until the end of the age, and should know that it is not without good reason that I chose you alone from all the nations. Now it has been witnessed to men that you fear God." Then God opened the heavens, and Abraham heard the words, "By myself I swear." Abraham, "You swear, and also I swear, I will not leave this altar until I have said what I have to say." God, "Speak whatever you have to speak." Abraham, "Did you not promise me you would let one come forth from my own bowels, whose seed would fill the whole world?" God, "Yes." "Who did you mean?" God, "Isaac." Abraham, "Did you not promise me to make my seed as numerous as the sands of the sea?" Yes. "Through which one of my children?" God, "Through Isaac." Abraham, "You know I might have reproached you, and said, O Lord of the world, yesterday you told me, in Isaac shall your seed be called. And now you say, take your son, your only son, and offer him for a burnt offering. But I refrained myself, and I said nothing. So might you, when the children of Isaac commit trespasses, and because of them fall on evil times, be mindful of the offering of their father Isaac, and forgive their sins, and deliver them from their suffering? God, you have said what you had to say. Now I will say what I have to say. Your children will sin before me in time to come, and I will sit in judgment of them on New Year's Day. And if they desire that I shall grant them pardon, they shall blow the sacrificial ram's horn, and I, mindful of the ram that was substituted for Isaac as a sacrifice, will forgive them their sins. Furthermore, the Lord revealed to Abraham that the temple, which was to be erected on the spot of Isaac's offering, would be destroyed. And as the ram substituted for Isaac extricated himself from the one tree only to be caught in another, so his children would pass from kingdom to kingdom. Delivered from Babylon, they would be subjugated by Media. Rescued from Media, they would be enslaved by Greece. Escaped from Greece, they would serve Rome. Yet in the end they would be redeemed in a final redemption, at the sound of this very ram's horn, when the Lord God shall blow the trumpet, and move as the hurricanes of the south. The place on which Abraham had erected the altar was the same where Adam had brought the first sacrifice, and Cain and Abel had offered their gifts. The same where Noah raised an altar to God after he left the ark, and Abraham, who knew that it was the place appointed for the temple, called it Yireh, for it would be the abiding place of the fear and service of God. But as Shem had given it the name Shalom, place of peace, and God would not give offense to either Abraham or Shem, he united the two names and called the city by the name Yireh Shalem, Jerusalem. Next, the death and burial of Sarah. End part 15 of 95, thelegensofthejews.com.